All right, we are live.
Hey.
Hey.
Woohoo.
Hey.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
Wonderful. We are here. We are live. So, are you guys all good to share?
We're all,
Yep.
it's all done. It is all done.
Now what
done. Sharing? Now that we've shared, we got to give people something.
We got
something to share.
We got to give them
some
something
content.
to share.
They got the crackers. Now where's the peanut butter?
Yeah. Well, welcome. Oh, and we've got people in the room. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started.
Yay.
Here. Welcome. And we'll start, of course, since we're talking about music today, we'll start with some music.
Let's do it.
Welcome.
All right.
All right. Sorry?
I was like, give me 2 more notes and let me figure out.
Is this not Name That Tune, is it?
That is not Name That Tune. Well, the name of that tune, that is the theme music for Unmute the Voices.
And
awesome.
Composed by Tahira Whittington, cellist extraordinaire and composer who did a 3-year run of Hamilton in Chicago, and a very dear friend of mine. And so that is the opening music that listeners will hear each time that they tune into.
Okay, that's really cool now because she's not a dead composer.
No. And a black woman.
Not dead.
Finally.
Not a man.
And
not a man.
And not a man.
And not a man.
Not white.
No.
Not a dead white man.
A dead white composer. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Not a dead white composer.
She is very much alive, living, and black.
I'm gonna need some medication.
Well, I just want to first welcome you guys, because people who may be tuning in don't know who you are, but Vivian, Phillips, Marcie, Sillman, thank you so much for joining me to talk about this new initiative that we have created here at King FM. I am the artist scholar in residence here at the radio station, and we are debuting a new show called Unmute the Voices later this month. It's on Juneteenth at 3:00 Pacific, which is a new program that will celebrate and highlight the music of BIPOC composers and artists. As you all know, classical music, as we just joked a moment ago, but really we were telling more of the truth than joking, is that classical music has always been this very dominant art form by white men. Yeah. And so this show is dedicated to highlighting and focusing on the contributions, the amazing contributions that people of color have given to this art form. So thank you both so much for joining me to talk about this and engaging in this conversation. And both of you,
thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
You both have just strong reputations in the arts sector, and both of you are seen as Seattle's arts heroes and champions and mothers of the arts, and also just citizens of, just, I would say, supreme citizens of the arts and cultural sector. And so on behalf of Seattle, I just want to thank you and acknowledge the incredible service that you both have provided this city. Why is it important for us to talk about and celebrate the music and the artistry of BIPOC artists? Why is that important now?
Well, can I just first of all say thank you very much for coming up with all those big words.
Yeah.
To describe us. I just
Well, I got Vivian Phillips on, and Vivian Phillips' vocabulary is not to be played with.
But I also just want to say that and thank you for really being the person that introduced me to BIPOC composers, dead and alive.
Yeah.
Classical composers. I am still quite enamored by the continued learning about St. George's de Xavier and all that you have done to give homage to him and many other composers. So, and I know Marcie will echo this, and I'm just going to say that, you know, dead white male composers have made great music, but they're not the only ones who have made great music.
Right.
There you go.
Quinton, you used the word now at the end of why should we be talking about this now? Why weren't we talking about it before now?
Hello.
Is the question I would ask. And why don't we know composers dead and living? There are a lot of people making music. And so I'm really excited about Unmute the Voices because you've got this great platform to really bring it to more than, you know, a small group of scholars, maybe at a university who probably do know all this music, where, you know, you sit in the halls of academia. In fact, I don't even know how you're doing this show because you have so many hats. You teach, you run a program teaching kids to perform, and you're doing this. And so the 1 hour that you're sleeping, you're researching these folks to introduce us to. Can't even imagine.
You know, the other reason why I think it's really important too, Quinton, in all sincerity right now, is I think about someone like yourself who has exhausted their musical education, has a PhD in violin performance. Yeah. You are a Black man. You are a composer. You are a teacher. You do lead a program, and you're one of only 2 tenured professors in your field of African descent in the country. So if this wasn't happening right now, where would that leave you? What road would you be left to take? And others who come behind you. So I think now is absolutely the perfect time because you are providing not just a platform, but a model for other outlets and avenues for the talents that people like you have worked so hard to mine over decades, right? And now you have an outlet for some of that thought, some of that knowledge, and an invitation for other people to step in and join you.
And it makes me really want to hear some, Quinton. So now, like, you know, are you going to play us some more music?
Yeah, I will actually play you a little bit of music. You know, I actually want to play the opening again of the show because there's a real purpose behind the opening of the show. And so we'll talk about that in a moment. Here it is.
Okay, super.
So I love the music. Clapping.
That's like a
what do you love about it?
Yeah, I like
it. Yeah. All that Africanness up in that classical music. I got you.
You know it. You know it.
I heard it.
You know it. That's right. And I think that that's really important is that as we are celebrating and highlighting these composers and these artists from all different backgrounds, that it's not only an ode to our ethnicity, but it's also a celebration that needs to be heard from a human standpoint. And that's what a clap represents. Claps represent celebration, invitation. And in order for us to break that barrier of, oh my God, this is classical music that's only for, you know, the dead white man or for the most rich and elite, we had to remove that and actually include body movements into the music.
Oh, nice. What a great invitation.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
a great,
And it's another way to unmute.
yeah.
Unmute your voice.
Yeah.
Let's clap.
I love it.
Let's clap.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when we're talking about right now and why this is important, what sort of advice would you give to artists who feel like their voices have been muted? What would you say to them in order for them to find power within themselves to unmute their voice?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think that that
Wow.
is a lot of what's behind the work that Marcie and I have done over decades, but the work that we're also endeavoring to do with our podcast, Double Exposure.
Yes.
Okay. And it's our dedication to give voice to the voiceless first and foremost, no matter if they are practicing artists, if they're arts administrators. We want to give voice to those people whose voices have been muted for a very long time. And the majority of those individuals are people of color. Yes. And we have, you know, kind of just leaned into this with that bent already because we're so dedicated to it. But my advice is to keep doing what you do. Never stop. Never ever stop doing what you're doing and assuming that nobody sees you, because somebody may see you at exactly the right time for you.
Right. I think it's the hardest thing to keep believing when doors are shut and you just keep knocking and you just keep knocking. I have young kids ask me, you know, how do I find that authentic voice? And I think it's listen to your heart and just really grab on, try to follow it.
Yeah, but I mean, couldn't one kind of serve as the devil's advocate and say, but I have no money. I have, you know, very limited resources. We're in a pandemic and I'm stuck in my house. I haven't been vaccinated, or I have been vaccinated, but I'm still afraid to leave. I don't have access to this or to that. How then can I unmute my voice when there are all these barriers that have made it impossible for anyone to hear me? What do you say to that person who's 20 years old, who may not have discovered their voice, or maybe they're, you know, older, they're in their 50s or in their 60s, and they still feel like their voices have been muted? What's your response?
Well, I think this is actually a very good time, unvaxxed and sitting at home. In the city of Seattle, or in the Northwest, I guess, the Northwest Art Streaming Hub was set up about a year ago now, I think, in the pandemic, really to help folks who don't have other outlets. And I mean, this is a really good pathway to put art that you may be making at home on your laptop or on your phone and exposing it to an audience. And I think more and more there are maybe not huge piles of cash, because in the arts world right now there's not huge piles of cash, but I think people are beginning to understand that traditional funding has gone maybe only in one direction, and there are a lot of of little rivulets going out in other places. I think there are ways to help be self-empowered, and maybe to find some people to help you be empowered at For Culture, or where you lead at the Office of Arts and Culture. You're the co-chair of the Seattle Arts Commission.
Mhm, mhm.
You know, I think, and I've said this before publicly, that one of the benefits that I see of the pandemic is that arts organizations, citizens, audiences, patrons, we now have a solution to the challenge that we've been looking at for decades, and that is meeting people where they are.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think the future has to be a hybrid. Everybody's not going to walk back into theaters and symphony halls and concert halls. They're just not going to do it. And even if they do decide to do it, we have the potential for an added benefit of reliving a live experience at home. And so
Mm,
I think that the door is open to innovation. And I
mm,
think that what all of us have to be thinking about are different ways of delivering and receiving art. And I think that would be also a piece of advice to people who feel like their voices are not being heard. Think about different ways of delivering your work, your art, of
mm,
making it available to the public.
mhm.
Quinton,
And,
I
and
know that you solicited from people for this project, for Unmute the Voices. You did outreach. You asked
right,
people to send you things, and I mean that's just one example
right.
of a new pathway for people to be heard, living composers and musicians.
And there's so many composers and so many artists who are extremely talented that no one has ever heard of. And so that's the great thing about this show, is the fact that we have the opportunity not only to play their music, but there's a video series that accompanies the radio show where we can ask these very thought-provoking questions and um, get to know them on a more personal level, where we're not only talking about their inspiration behind the music, but also talking about their lives, talking about social issues or things that have prevented them from, or any struggles that have prevented them from achieving whatever goals that they have had as composers and or artists. And so that's what's so, I think, fantastic about this opportunity, is that it allows of so many different people from all different backgrounds, not just all Black, but Indigenous and Hispanic and mixed race and all of these different people, the opportunity to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
My question for you both is, we've talked a little bit about how classical music has this connotation of being elitist, of being created by white men who are of authority. What sort of advice would both of you give the classical music community towards engaging, involving, being more inclusive for people who are not well versed in classical music, who are not avid classical music listeners? Or what sort of advice would you give the classical music community in terms of how to invite people in who are not used to speaking their quote love language?
Boy, there's so many ways to talk about that. I mean, one thing I'm thinking about is just venues. I mean, the radio, where you're at King FM right now, I think, right? You're sitting
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
studios. I mean, radio is so awesome because it's portable and it's everywhere. I think with all the classical art forms, the traditional legacy Western classical art forms, I would say, they're in these kind of palaces, which are beautiful and wonderful and sound great. But I think it's breaking the walls down, and this art needs to be everywhere. I mean, there's I have to say, I play a lot of Name That Composer in my car when I'm driving, because I listen to King FM when I'm driving around. And I don't know a lot, but your colleague, Dave Beck, has taught me many things about classical music. And I think in the mix of, you know, Beethoven and Stravinsky and Bach at the level of King FM, like Unmute the Voices is nice, but those voices should be all through the day parts. They shouldn't just be on your show. It should be part of the normal fare that is broadcast regularly.
You know, that's a great point. And I do know that our CEO, Brenda Barnes, has now implemented where every hour, and my producer's in the background and tell me if I'm incorrect in this, but has vowed to have music, women composers performed every hour. Is that right? I think it's every hour. If not every hour,
What
it's
if you
every other
say
hour.
it now? It's going to be true. It's true. Just
Yeah,
say it.
but I think it
oh,
is.
Brenda,
I think
you
it's,
said this.
but you know, but that's what I appreciate about King FM is the fact that they have had several different community groups and community committees where King has solicited feedback from various types of people to talk about how can we be more inclusive and how can we reach more people. And because at the end of the day, it's just good music, right? It's just good music. I mean, if you listen to the 70s, you know, of Al Green or Marvin Gaye, or I mean, the string sections were just dynamite, right? Like,
I mean, the sound of Philadelphia, TSOP, Mother, Father, Sister, Brother. I mean, all of these. Don't get me started on 70s music orchestrations, okay?
Right, it's just good music.
I love them.
So, and I'd love to hear from you, Vivian, about what can the classical music community do to be more inclusive, to make it seem so that people want to go, so that people want to be engaged. What would you say?
I mean, you know, I remember a while ago at the University of Washington, they did a little project on classical music and kind of compared it to 70s music. And, you know, I pulled out some of my LPs and brought them with me and played excerpts, you know, of music where, I mean, Isaac Hayes did some of the incredible orchestrations in his music, you know.
Walk on by.
I mean, the Superfly album is filled with beautiful, beautiful orchestrations. And so when I think about what that community can do, I think about the fact that I consider myself to be a dilettante. I know just enough about a lot of stuff to get me in trouble, right? So think about being more expansive in your own experiences, right? In your own musical experiences, and be able to bring that back into your experience at the opera house, at the symphony hall, which, you know, gives you an opportunity to say, hey, what about? Hey, what if? You know, be interactive with the administration in that way and really bring the community into those halls. But the other thing that I think is unfortunate, I was introduced to classical music because I played music in elementary school, right? And Milton Katims was like my idol. I was like, oh my God, if I ever get to see this man conduct. Because I used to have to listen to him on King FM. That's where I heard the music that I was able to play. So I think the other piece of this is making music much more incorporated into our learning experience, you know, from beginning all the way through, because then that creates community. You know, I don't know the family of the person who's sitting next to me necessarily if I'm in second or third chair in the orchestra. right? But we can all kind of come together around music. And I think that that's missing from our experiences these days. And I mean, I think that at Key to Change, you're in that work that you're doing, you're trying to reduce that chasm of barriers and differences. And I think we just need more of that as well.
Right.
I think there's a lot of silos. I mean, when you mentioned, women composers every hour, I just envision a world where it's not, here's the slot for the women, here's the slot for the BIPOC musician, here's the slot for classical, here's the slot for Marvin Gaye, but that it's all really meshed together, and it's just part of the weave of our lives. I mean, I don't think that's the responsibility of classical music lovers or painters or sculptors. I think we really need to think about culture differently, our culture differently.
I agree. And speaking of culture, you two are infusing Seattle. Vivian, you've touched on it just a little bit, but I want to talk in the last couple minutes that we have about double exposure. And how will double exposure expose Seattle and infuse Seattle with culture? And what's the impact that you all want to have with double exposure?
Once you get inside our messy brains, you will never be the same on the other side.
Something like that.
It is a little bit of our messy brains having a platform to explore the questions that I think both of us have been curious about for so many years. We're curious, okay, nosy people. And so what we get to do is mine.
And bossy.
And bossy. We get to mine our curiosity with artists, makers, creators, and really think deeply about some of the concepts around creativity and also citizenship.
I think underneath it all is something we were just talking about, which is that I think all three of us, I would think you would agree, Quinton, believe that the creative world, arts and culture, are essential to a functioning world, to a functioning society. And that just like we shouldn't be siloing off classical music or BIPOC composers, that we can't really think about the city or the country that we live in without the real impact, like enduring and important impact that creators have had on everything from education to healthcare.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about.
And we're talking with some incredible people. I mean, so far we've been able to lay down a few episodes with some incredibly interesting people. And I'm not going to give it away, I don't think, but...
When does this start? When are you guys
June
launching?
25th.
There you go, Marcie. I left it for you.
June 25th. June 25th.
June 25th. Double exposure, double trouble of the arts and culture of Seattle.
And beyond.
And beyond. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So stay tuned for that, everybody.
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you so much to you both for engaging with me for this time to talk about Unmute the Voices. I really appreciate you both. I respect you both so very much and love you both to pieces, and have admired both of your contributions for a long time to this area. So thank you for helping me celebrate Unmute the Voices.
Well, Quinton, thank you so very much. And listen, when people think about Seattle and Seattle's musical Q, we want everybody to know that the other Q is Quinton Morris.
Okay. Absolutely.
Dr.
Yeah.
Quinton Morris, I might add.
And just a big congratulations. I'm so excited about this. I can't wait.
Hey,
Can't wait.
I'm going to ask one last question. You both have been in media for a long time. What's your advice for me with this show? I'm going to ask publicly.
Don't talk
Have
so
fun.
much. No,
Have fun. Have fun. Have fun.
Hey,
That's
check
my
it out.
advice.
My biggest learning about podcasts, and Marcie hears me say this all the time, is that I learned you can cuss on podcasts. So you can use the language.
That's the only reason she agreed.
You can use the language we use when we're talking to each other on the phone. Have fun. Just have fun with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that advice from both of you as pioneers of media, arts media. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who has watched this very lively conversation with Vivian and Marcie. Our show, Unmute the Voices, premieres on Saturday, June 19th, which is Juneteenth at 3:00 Pacific time. You can find out more information at king.org/unmute the voices. Thank you so much again to our guest and for everyone for tuning in. And we will see you again very, very soon. Check out our Facebook page to follow us and to also find out about our next events, which will be coming up later this week. So thank you, everybody.
Congrats. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Quinn. Bye.